Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book from Elgar Publishing Limited. They're an independent publisher based in Cheltenham. They produce some very useful practical guides, and this is one of them. It took our attention because it's very important as a guide for practitioners. This one is called European Fashion Law. It's got a subtitle, A Practical Guide from Startup to Global Success. Fashion, of course, being a very, very important part of the economy. The book's been written by Rosie Burbidge, and we think it's an excellent book. Elizabeth was the lead writer on the book review, and the title we've given it is Pertinent Legal Advice for Fashion Entrepreneurs with Global Domination in Mind. I think that's probably going a little bit far, but it's a very interesting book. Let's have a look at it. It's a paperback version that I've got here. There is a cased version, and there is, of course, the ebook. There is you can probably see it, the spine, and then there's some detail on the back, which you probably can't see too much of. There are websites to go with it. On the back cover, there's information about Rosie and what she is actually, where she comes from. She's a partner at Gunnar Cook LLP, and at the front there are some quotes. And if we look at the back of the book, first of all, starting at the back, there is of course an index, which you can see quite clearly there. The index is by page numbering, and it's quite a detailed index. You can see it starts there. There's quite a lot to it. Then after that we've got the various chapters, and you can see there's paragraph numbering for them. If we go to the front of the book, you can see this is the practical guide series there. This is the actual front page of this particular book. Then there's the blurb. Then there's a very nice dedication, which I'm going to leave you to read. We only review books which we think are important. And one of the reasons we think this is important is because it's a good book. I don't review books that we don't think very much of. This is a good book, and that's a very tender dedication, which I'm pointing out to you. Then we've got the content overview of the book there. The various parts. 4 parts in total: getting started before you tell anyone about your new product or idea, getting your business started, and finally the big issues. 26 chapters in total. Then there's a detailed table of contents after that, which goes into a lot more detail about the actual chapters themselves, ending up there with the index at the back. Then some figures which are used. Then there's a preface. Well worth reading a preface. Gives you a very good idea of what the book's aim is, the mission statement, and it gives you various definitions and how you can use the book. Then there are key terms. Again, this is a book, I think, because it's a practical book, it's very much a book for people who won't have much knowledge of the law. So it's useful. It's trying to help you and guide you. And then it starts with getting started, part 1. And then you can see what is fashion law. And as I say, a very interesting book. Paragraph numbering at the sides, and you can see there is some footnoting, and the book runs to just over 400 pages. So what do we say about the book? Well, it took my eye when I looked at it, and I thought this was it's something that is not thought of, because obviously people think about the law of contract, possibly intellectual property, possibly, and all sorts of other things. But what is this really about? Because it's about a start-up of a company. So from drawing designs on the kitchen table to opening a shop, to launching a website, then opening more shops, then embarking on the processes of global expansion. Anyone involved at any stage of the fashion businesses that we have needs at least some understanding of the crucial legal issues. That's what you get here. If you happen to be a lawyer acting for clients within the fashion industry, then this is the book to buy, in our view, or to recommend enthusiastically to said clients, especially if they're starting up or branching out. And Elgar have found, I think, a little niche here, which will be very, very helpful to a very wide readership. Now, the author is Rosie Burbidge, and she makes the point in the chapter on incorporating your company that the ideal components of a fashion entrepreneur are creativity and business acumen, 2 attributes that are not necessarily found in the same person, although of course there are exceptions. Just think about the advertising industry. You have the suits and the creatives, so you've got some idea of how in fact the approach to the area, this particular area of entrepreneurial activity is approached. And as a typical fashion house starts as a team effort, a certain tug of war between the creative and the practical may cause tensions or possibly disputes down the line, especially, as the author points out, insufficient thought is put into the structure of the business at the outset, whether a sole trader or partnership or eventually a company. That, of course, is a problem not just for fashion but for the wider civil and commercial community. But of course it's an important point to bear in mind. It's typical of the plain speaking, hard-headed advice that Burbidge doles out to us and to the reader, as page after page, from beginning to end, the main legal issues that all fashion business needs to be aware of are plainly set out, together with what the author calls the best and worst approaches and examples from the legal front line. We all have our war stories, our horror stories of what goes on, and this is no different. The most pertinent legal topics for the fashion industry include employment, of course, data protection naturally, and above all, intellectual property. Very much of an expanding subject matter, if you like, and substantive law area since the 1980s. These, as the author and lawyer puts it, are woven into the modern fashion business. Quote, "I start with a fashion design student," she says, "and take them a journey to global domination." And it should be added that the author is an intellectual property lawyer, the kind who can help you if someone pinches your creative ideas, passes them off as their own, and profits from the results. IP, therefore, of course, looms large as an issue in the book. And that, as I've indicated, would be one of the big areas, together with fundamental commercial law understanding. The author's also worked on a number of contributors from across Europe, which gives the book its pan-European orientation. And of course that, I think, is also very important from the point of view of the fashion industry as a whole. So Brexit or no Brexit, the world's major fashion capitals are in Europe, of course. Been there, Paris, Milan, and the third, of course, is London. Oh, and of course there's New York, but there are lots of books about legal issues in America's fashion industry, which we don't need to trouble ourselves with here. Because Burbidge's book, in our view, is, however, a singularly important one in that the legal texts on the subject of the European fashion industry are far too rare at the moment. Independent practitioners and in-house lawyers, as well as their clients, will doubtless regard this book as essential and well-nigh compulsory reading, although the author has warned us that, in effect, while a legal text is helpful, it can't actually replace proper legal advice. So I think, one should be aware of that. Now, the date of publication is given as February 2019. Let's just have a look at the book again. As I said, it's available as an ebook as well as a paperback. There's the front, there's the spine, then there's the back. Elgar are an independent legal publishers, and they're very, very useful in this particular area. This is an important area. Before you can get anyone new involved, you want to think of a few things. This is chapter 10, working with designers, confidentiality, avoiding discrimination, terminating employment, trade unions and employment law, the gender pay gap. So all the information is there, and the book is very well structured, I think, to cover all of the questions that you, as a person involved in the fashion industry, wouldn't want to know about fashion law. A very big thank you, I think, goes to Rosie and all the people who've obviously been involved in the production of this book. I think it's one, as I said right at the beginning, that would be of great benefit and interest to a wide readership, and certainly I think that's what it's designed as. And I think also the Elgar practical guides, that is their main aim, and I'd like to thank them very much indeed for doing this, because I think it's an important step forward so that people can understand where they are when a dispute arises. Thank you to all. Bye bye.